There's two Tony Sopranos. You've never seen the other one.
The itsy bitsy spider went up the water spout.
A character that has been under the microscope of psychologists for a long while now is Tony Soprano.
I find I have to be the sad clown, laughing on the outside, crying on the inside.
A depressed mafia boss who goes to therapy and gives us an insight into his mind.
We're soldiers. Soldiers don't go to hell. It's war. Soldiers, they kill other soldiers.
But regardless, none of this justifies the evil shown during the show.
So the itsy bitsy spider went up the spout again.
Do you hold your father responsible for what you've become?
Yeah, sometimes I think about what life would have been like if my father hadn't gotten mixed up in the things he got mixed up in.
Tony wasn't raised in a normal environment. His dad Johnny and his uncle Junior were fairly high-ranking members of the mafia, and therefore the older people Tony was surrounded by weren't regular civilians, they were mobsters, and although traumatized by it as a young kid, Tony became a product of his immediate environment.
Willie Overall, the bookie, Labor Day 1982.
But how did Tony just become one of them? Well, there's a concept in psychology called social learning theory, and although it's got some faults, the studies within it seem to correlate extremely well with Tony's upbringing. The Bobo doll experiment by Bandura in 1961 showed that young kids who watched an adult play aggressively with this inflatable plastic toy were more likely to also be aggressive when put in the room with the Bobo doll, compared to kids that had seen the adults playing neutrally. What was also found was that aggression increased if the adult model was the same gender as the child, and if the adults were praised after their acts of aggression as opposed to being punished, the children were also more likely to imitate that aggression. Now, with all of that said, Tony would see men like his father do these seemingly bad deeds and not face much repercussion. In fact, a man Tony watched his dad beat up, Tony then watched respecting him, as if to suggest this aggression and violence made you a more respected man.
Good for you, Johnny. Show those fucking sons of bitches. What's up, Rocco?
I don't understand. The man your father beat up was the same one who was congratulating him?
Yeah, one of them.
Although Tony may have not consciously viewed things in this manner, his subconscious was learning what actions are acceptable in this environment, because in his words,
"You're born to this shit. You are what you are."
And after killing for the first time at the age of 22, he continued up the ranks to become a high-ranking mafia member just like his dad, and was firmly implemented into a life of crime. But before we dive into his mind, I want to let you know about this video's sponsor, Private Internet Access, a VPN service that keeps your browser secure. For those of you who don't know what a VPN is, I'll make it real simple. A virtual private network, or VPN for short, protects your identity information online from potential hackers or any third parties trying to gain access. It does this by hiding your IP address and safeguarding your internet connection through an encrypted tunnel. Because when you're connected to public Wi-Fi, whether you're at a cafe or a library or anywhere else, your data is at risk of being stolen by hackers on the same Wi-Fi network. Private Internet Access makes sure this is never the case. But that isn't even my favorite feature when using them. At some point, you've probably encountered going on Netflix or any other streaming site to watch a show or a movie, only to find out it's not available in your country. A real pity, right? Well, not with Private Internet Access, as it lets you change the server you're in to access the site or stream your show. The other day I wanted to rewatch one of my favorite movies, Interstellar, only to find out it's not on the UK Netflix. However, all I had to do was change my location to the US, and in a matter of seconds, my problem was fixed. If you pay for Netflix but don't have private internet access, that's like paying for a cinema ticket for a new movie but only getting to watch the trailer. Why not get the full experience? And if that wasn't enough of an incentive, you can use your account on an unlimited amount of devices, meaning your whole family can be protected just from your subscription. And by clicking my link in the description, you can get 83% off private internet access. That's just $2.03 a month, and you also get 4 extra months completely for free. Thank you Private Internet Access for sponsoring this video. Now let's continue diving into his dark psychology. After the current boss of the family, Jackie, passed away, the position became vacant, and fingers started to point towards Tony as an acceptable replacement. However, his uncle Junior was adamant that the position deserved to be his, so Tony let him.
We need a leader.
We do.
That's why I want it to be you, Uncle Joe.
Come here. Crazy.
But what Tony is covertly doing here is the first major dark psychology tactic we see him use: deception.
My uncle got me in a box where I gotta do something I don't want to do.
You know that sometimes it's important to let them have the illusion of being in control.
This suggestion by Melfi indirectly caused Tony to deceive his own uncle. Now, before we get ahead of ourselves, let me clarify that not all deception falls under dark psychology. Common deception includes things like lying, hiding the truth, providing fake evidence on a small scale, and you've probably used them at some point in your life. Whether it's for kindness, embarrassment, or feelings of inadequacy, people use deception quite often. For example, studies showed that more than half of men lie about their height on dating apps, but I wouldn't categorize that into dark psychology even though it is deception. Dark deception, on the other hand, is when the truth is either changed, hidden, or ignored in favor of the person deceiving, and does so with the intention or awareness that the person being deceived can be harmed, whether psychologically, financially, or physically. What Tony is doing here is making his Uncle Junior believe he's got what he's asked for in being the boss of the family, whilst Tony has already decided with the other members that he'll actually be running the crew, unbeknownst to Junior.
Tell me why this was a smart move to make Junior the big Willie.
Look at him. He's content. Thinks he's the king of kings. Truth is, every decision is made by me. He doesn't know we kick back to Jackie. Point is, he's got the title. He's a happy camper.
Only now we got a brand new lightning rod on top to take the hits.
Smart. Very smart.
Now this becomes dark when you realize Tony's intention. It's not just about wanting to be the one who gives orders, it's so that when outsiders are looking in, Junior is labelled as the boss, and when the police need a target to take down, they're going to go for Junior and not Tony.
Junior Soprano, alleged boss of the New Jersey crime family that bears his name, was indicted today on federal racketeering charges.
Tony's plan worked, and using dark deception spared him some time to lead without being the target. Now being the boss, he had to carry out and order the executions of other men.
Please, Tony, I'm begging.
There you go, you big motherfucker.
But the reasons for some of his murders show us a different dark psychology concept Tony falls into. The man who got killed in the last chapter was Philly Parisi, also known as Spoons. The reason he was murdered was because he had a big mouth.
He had her in a nursing home, you know?
Get the fuck out of here.
And this upset Junior no end. And when Junior come after him, Tony went to the home, tried to suffocate his own mother.
Maybe you should spread that rumor.
He was seeing a psychiatrist.
Tony?
Fucking broad from Montclair.
Through the grapevine, it was heard that Spoons was spreading rumors about Tony in a negative light, and for that reason, his life went on no further. Tony did this for an obvious reason. If these rumors were to circulate, they would make him look weaker, a man who doesn't respect his mother, a man who talks about his feelings to a therapist. That couldn't be his reputation. So what does this make Tony? You may have heard of Niccolo Machiavelli, a political philosopher from the 16th century who'd carried out work on political power and influence. In his treatise, The Prince, Machiavelli outlines ideas, principles, and tactics that have served as a blueprint for seekers of influence throughout history. Amongst his favourite dictates are that it's better to be feared than to be loved, and that the appearance of virtue is more important than virtue itself. And so, leaders in history choosing to use his principles and tactics have been deemed Machiavellian, consisting of traits such as a focus on self-interest at all times and an understanding of the importance of image, perception, and superficial appearance, and the ruthless exercise of power and cruelty over compassion and mercy. Simply put, before an action is carried out, a person with a Machiavellian approach to the world will ask themselves, how will this benefit me, and how will my public perception be impacted as a result? So in the Spoons incident, the murder benefits him as it prevented the spread of the rumour, and his public perception would also increase if he told people that Spoons was killed for spreading rumours, as the other mafia members would see him as a ruthless leader. And that's where another issue arises. As the head of a family in the mafia, you pretty much have to be Machiavellian, and you have to opt into being feared as opposed to being loved. A mob leader that is loved but isn't feared poses the risk of being taken out as they're not a threat, but being feared keeps everyone obedient. So Tony doesn't have much of a choice if he wants to stay on top in the long run. Later in the show, a member of his crew, Vito, gets outed as a homosexual, something not just looked down upon in their culture, but worthy of death.
I want to kill the fat f***ing myself, be a fucking honor. I can't believe I stuck up for him. I feel like I've been stabbed in the heart.
We can't have him here in our social club no more. I mean, that much I do know.
Social club? He's gotta go!
However, when discussing the matter with his therapist, Dr. Melfi, he admits that he truly doesn't care.
How do you feel about homosexuality?
I find it disgusting. Men kissing men, holding hands in the street. This guy that got outed, look, something inside me says, God bless, I salute. Who gives a shit?
However, after seeing everyone start to wonder why he's taking so long to order the hit, despite wanting to let him live, Tony caves in.
Vito, Atlantic City, forget it.
Why the change up?
I can't keep fighting Phil on this. Our businesses are all entwined. You gotta pick your battles. You want your no-show jobs, Vito's gotta go.
In this situation, and for the sake of longevity, it's more beneficial to get Vito killed because it will reinforce this image that he's a ruthless leader. Another instance was with Jackie Jr., and this situation has been up for debate online, so I'm here to put my opinion down. Jackie Jr. was the son of the late Jackie Aprile, who Tony was close with. Tony tried to keep him on the straight and narrow, not to be in the mafia involved with violence, but to finish education and get a good job. But Jackie Jr. became obsessed with wanting to be respected as a gangster, and ends up attempting to rob a card game, shooting and killing the dealer, shooting and wounding Tony's driver Furio, and then fleeing the scene. Now, the expectation of Tony here is to order his murder, but because of Jackie's father and because his own family were close to Jackie, he had to protect his image to the family that he wouldn't do something like that. But on the other hand, the mafia members wouldn't respect him for letting this slide, so he uses very subtle words and actions when talking to Ralph to accomplish this.
Tell you the truth, Tony, I want to give the kid a pass.
Yeah?
It's just me, though. I know you got bigger concerns, you're the boss, and I'll make sure your orders are done, whatever they may be.
Well, I think you should go with your instincts on this, Ralph.
You do? But Furio took a hit. Chris, these are made men.
Well, make sure they respect your decision. Because I'm sure you're going to do the right thing. That's why I made you captain. And hey, your decision goes the other way. The one thing you cannot do, Ralph, you cannot do, is blame yourself. You took this kid under your wing. You schooled him as best you could. Didn't you?
What I believe Tony is doing here is using hypnotism. No, not that type of hypnotism, but one used in the realm of dark psychology. The simple definition would be the ability to make suggestions to someone that filter through deep layers of their consciousness. The suggestion doesn't have to be explicit, but can be applied in a context that both parties might understand, and typically, the most skilled manipulators can make it super subtle. Without this understanding, you might view this scene as Tony almost siding with Ralph and supporting his decision to let Jackie be. But there are multiple things Tony says or does after Ralph states he wants to give Jackie a pass that can fall into this hypnosis category.
Well, I think you should go with your instincts on this, Ralph.
This is the first implicit suggestion. You have to remember the manipulator needs to sway them in a direction without making it apparent they're trying to do so. Tony and Ralph are in the mafia, where the principles are, when someone does something as bad as what Jackie did, they need to go. Both Tony and Ralph are aware of this, so by telling Ralph go with your instincts, it's causing Ralph to consider what would be the smartest decision to make here. He reinforces this with,
because I'm sure you're gonna do the right thing. That's why I made you captain.
By Tony saying do the right thing, it implies that there is a right and wrong. And as mentioned, being in the mafia, Tony is implicitly reminding him that there is an expectation, and as a captain, he bears responsibility. Remember, Tony's aim in this conversation is to make Ralph kill Jackie Jr. to save face, but without it officially being ordered by him to spare him of the guilt. But Ralph is also close to Jackie Jr., as he is in a relationship with Jackie Jr.'s mother and doesn't want the guilt either. So Tony then mentions,
the decision goes the other way. The one thing you cannot do, Ralph, is blame yourself.
This is Tony's final and most blatant attempt to sway Ralph in the direction of doing it. You see, Ralph behind the scenes was actually a bad influence to Jackie Jr. The whole idea of robbing the card game was suggested by Ralph. Ralph gave Jackie Jr. his first gun, which Tony found on him. And Tony doesn't know this, but he suspects Ralph of something along these lines, so this statement is used to make Ralph feel some sort of responsibility for what needs to be done, because he knows this statement isn't true. I think this scene is a beautiful display of dark psychology in action. Not long after, Jackie Jr. does get killed on Ralph's orders, and Tony didn't once have to directly give the order. But by using hypnosis, he saved face and doesn't have to carry the guilt. But Tony's ability to understand these tactics allows him to continuously carry out evil tasks. Tony's ability to manipulate got more evil as time went on, and one of the darker moments were the moments before the death of Adriana.
All they wanted was some information, and they would leave us alone. I didn't tell them nothing. I swear to God, I just license plates, some other stupid shit. They wanted me to wear a wire, but I wouldn't do it.
Adriana was the fiancée of Christopher, who Tony called his nephew, but wasn't actually his nephew, but for the sake of this video, I'm going to continue calling him his nephew. And Christopher was also one of Tony's capos, which was a respected role. So when Chris found out Adriana had been picked up by the FBI to cooperate for over a year, he had to inform Tony out of loyalty.
What's wrong?
You know, I've always been loyal to you, T.
What are you trying to tell me, Christopher?
Adriana.
What about her?
Feds.
And by telling Tony, he'd signed her death sentence. Following this, Tony effortlessly uses manipulation, almost showing off his skills at this point.
Yeah, it's me. Jesus, I don't even know how to say this. It's Christopher. He tried to commit suicide.
Oh my God, is he all right?
He's fine. Did he say anything to you? I mean, did he appear suicidal?
No.
Are you sure? Because his mom said he's very upset about something. Anyway, I'm on my way up there now, and I'm going to send Sil by to pick you up then, okay?
Okay.
All right.
Knowing what she'd done, she might have had her guard up against anyone in the crime family. But Tony was able to use the perfect language, tone, and story to make her feel a sense of guilt. This compels her to follow his instructions without thinking, and in turn, led to her fate.
Come on.
No,
Come
please.
On. Where you fucking
Please.
Come on, come on.
No.
The reason Tony is able to remain so calm at this point when it comes to ordering murders is due to both his desensitization and his lack of empathy. One of the hardest tasks Tony had to carry out was the murder of one of his own closest friends, Sal Bonpensiero, also known by his associates as Big Pussy. He turned into an FBI informant, and when Tony found out, he felt betrayed, but also did what he had to do.
On the face, okay? Give me that. Huh?
This shows that once someone flips and cooperates with the feds, Tony is able to see them as easily disposable, and that can only be done with a lack of empathy. Something else that displays his lack of empathy is Tony's continuous pursuit of sexual partners whilst having a wife. It's a tricky one to discuss because in the mafioso culture in the show, the vast majority of the members have what they call a Goomah, which is a disposable mistress that will never take the place of the wife and are only used for sexual desires. The wives of the members accept this when marrying them, and therefore it's common to assume that there's nothing wrong with Tony cheating, and for that reason I'm not going to dive too deep into it. However, Tony doesn't just get one partner. He goes through a lot of women and seems to develop stronger feelings with some of them than with his wife.
I'm crazy about you. You know that, don't you?
I never met anybody like you.
After getting a phone call from one of Tony's mistresses informing her of another girl Tony slept with, Carmela has enough.
Is this Mrs. Sopranos?
Yes, it is.
I used to f your husband.
What do you want?
Well, I thought you might want to know we have some sadness in common. He's been sleeping with my cousin Svetlana.
You have made a fool of me for years with these whores. Now it's come into our home.
What are you talking about?
The Russian called. Your son answered the telephone. She's insane.
She's fucking certifiable. I told you. You can't believe nothing she says, whatever it is.
What about her cousin? The nurse who took care of your mother, who I liked? You've been f***ing her?
There is not a shred of truth in that.
Why would the cousin make it up? Because she's jealous! Why do you fuck?
Tony's immediate denial suggests deep down he does know there's something wrong with cheating on your wife and promises to change, but still he continues to do it again and again after this. He doesn't have empathy for his wife, but as mentioned, that's the culture, and Tony's addiction to women might be due to something else from his childhood.
What kind of person can I be where his own mother wants him dead?
I spoke briefly about Johnny Soprano at the start of this video, how Tony's father contributed to the life he leads, but someone who might have contributed a bit more to Tony's character is Livia Soprano, Tony's mother.
Oh, that's right, I forgot. Jazz never does anything wrong. She's just perfect.
Stop driving me crazy!
No, I'm not.
I could stick this fork in your eye!
Most children crave validation and positive attention from their parents. When they love their parents, they hope for love back. Tony tried hard to be a good son to his mother, but her own psychological issues got in the way of their relationship. Livia was a terrible mother and often made her kids' life worse by talking down on them, downplaying achievements, and even views babies as
animals. They're no different than dogs. Somebody has to teach them right from wrong.
She had an incredibly pessimistic view of the world, but even when that is the case, you don't put that on your children. You see, Dr. Murphy suggested Livia has
borderline personality disorder.
Despite online debates over the accuracy of the diagnosis, I believe it to be quite valid. Livia definitely shows emotional instability, disturbed patterns of thinking, and unstable relationships. However, the condition that really impacts her relationship with Tony is narcissistic personality disorder, which mainly relates to arrogance and self-centeredness. The reason she puts her pessimistic attitude onto her children is due to everything being about her, and how everyone is against her, and how everyone mistreats her, and this all derives from this narcissism. So Tony growing up doesn't get any validation, and perhaps he searches for this validation elsewhere, whether that be through getting respected as the boss, or maybe by the attention, attraction, and validation he gets from the woman he sleeps with. As a kid, he had a woman he loved who didn't love him back. Now, as an adult man, he can show these women slight signs of love, and in his eyes, they love him back by sleeping with him, fulfilling that repressed need for validation by women. This in turn leads Tony into a general craving of indulgence, with women, food, material possessions, and eventually gambling, all because now he's in a position to do so. He carries this hurt from childhood every day as an adult, but you may have heard the phrase, hurt people, and that couldn't resonate more with Tony. Did you know that fishermen can leave a bucket of crabs completely unattended without any of them escaping? It turns out when one crab tries to escape, another one will pull them back down. If I can't escape this burden, I don't want to see you escape this burden. Tony does this to a couple people in the show, one of them being his own sister Janice. Janice and Tony weren't ever really close as Janice experienced favoritism by their father Johnny.
What are you doing? I'm getting in the car. Why? Where are you going? Someplace. Dad, where are you going? Can I come too?
Your mother wants you to help her get the screens down to the basement.
No, I want to go with you guys. He said no.
Janice?
After high school, Janice moved out of New Jersey to live her own life, and it wasn't until their 40s where they properly reunited as Janice tried to leech off her mother's free house. But what became evident was that similar to Tony, Janice had an anger problem.
Your kid is out of control. She's been tripping and pushing all summer. Oh, shut up and get out of here. Don't tell me to shut up. What are you, crazy? Oh!
Both of them had a tendency to get angry as soon as something didn't go their way, and this could have derived from either parent, to be honest. After being shouted at by Tony, and after her husband Bobby gave her an ultimatum,
Be that as it may, the past and all, if you don't go to these anger classes they have or whatever, this with us ain't gonna work out.
Janice did decide to go to anger management. However, once it started to benefit her, and she was able to find some level of peace, not reacting to typically anger-provoking stimuli, Tony notices and can't help but suppress the crab in a bucket mentality.
Wonder where Harpo's eating his Sunday dinner.
Who's Harpo?
It's Hal, Janice's son.
You have a son?
You didn't tell us that.
He's half
I wonder what's French Canadian for. I grew up without a mother. Sacre bleu, where is me mama?
I don't gotta run down. I'm the boy's uncle.
He does this for no reason. It's because he's miserable and doesn't want to see his own sister do better than him mentally, considering she was once terrible with anger. It's incredibly spiteful, and considering it was Tony who told Bobby to get Janice in check, it shows how much he's willing to pull someone down to his level. And he actually does the same with his nephew Christopher. Now, before explaining what he does to show the crab in the bucket mentality, there's more altercations beforehand that occur between the two that need to be discussed. First of all, their relationship stems from Dickie Moltisanti, Christopher's father and a mentor to Tony. Dickie died when Christopher was just a baby, so Tony helped guide him, and as he grew, Tony brought him into the game and wanted him to have a more important role. Tony would call Christopher to help clean up dead bodies that he'd murdered, or he'd get him to kill people himself. But one moment that was very suspicious and still remains a mystery is getting Christopher to kill the police officer.
Guy in there killed your father.
What the fuck are you talking about?
Barry Hayden, detective lieutenant in the Clifton Police Force. Retired today.
Everybody always told me he was a fucking cop. I thought he was dead. My mother can't even talk about it.
Hey, nice house, Soprano. Say he paid cash for it. Good luck.
I must disclaim that it's unconfirmed whether Tony is telling the truth and this man is genuinely who killed Christopher's dad, or he was using this for his own needs. But of course, for this video, we're going to explore the possibilities of the latter. If Tony is lying to Christopher here, perhaps has some personal beef with this man, then he would be using a range of dark psychology tactics to get Chris to carry it out. Firstly, it would be deception, as it's straight up lying. It would also be covert emotional manipulation, as he's preying on Christopher's resentment towards his father's killer, and as seen in other episodes, he clearly feels some sadness over not meeting his dad. It would definitely be classed as hypnotism because, as mentioned, hypnotism is a deep suggestion where the manipulator doesn't directly suggest anything, and here Tony knows that just giving Christopher this information is going to cause him to take action, which he does.
No problem.
I'm sorry.
Put him
Sorry.
outside.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. What are you gonna do?
And I believe that this was also a hint of brainwashing. You see, similar to hypnosis, brainwashing in dark psychology isn't 100% the same as it's portrayed in the media. It's not like Hydra brainwashing Bucky in Captain America. It's a lot more subtle. The slow process of replacing a person's ideas about identity and belief with new ideas that are intended to suit the purpose of the brainwasher. So not just in this instance, but in all the instances leading up to it, with all the things Tony made Chris do, is to make Chris view himself even more like he's Tony's loyal minion who would do any dirty work for him. Even when confronting the officer, Christopher states that even if this guy didn't kill his dad, he needs to die anyway, as Tony clearly wants him dead.
You're being set up. He's lying to you, whoever he is.
Wouldn't make any difference.
What do you mean it wouldn't make any difference?
He wants you dead.
However, Chrissy developed both a drug and drinking problem, which deeply affected his character, and Tony sent him to rehab. He comes out of it a better person, and at first, Tony is supportive of his recovery.
That place help you?
Oh, yeah. I found out about strains I have I didn't even know I had.
Well, you look great. Thank you.
But it doesn't take long for the crab mentality to return.
Sobriety's hard enough work without having to get mocked for it.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Why don't you have a f***ing drink, will you? Because you're driving everybody crazy with this shit. The f***ing higher power yammering and the sweets and the key lime pie and the... Jesus.
Tony got Chris to go to rehab, but then when Chris stays strong and sober, he gets ridiculed for it, because Tony is unable to control his own problems. The thing is, the sobered up Chris could see Tony for what he was.
My boss, you know, for all his bullshit encouragement, how he respects what I'm doing, the reality is he resents my sobriety. He's an enabler too, this guy, the worst fucking kind. Pours you a drink with one hand, judges you with the other if you take it.
Christopher sees Tony's dark psychology for what it is. He is an evil energy infecting those around him, making their lives worse. But unfortunately, Christopher couldn't get out of the lifestyle, and he also met his fate to the same man he couldn't escape from. The dark triad is the final concept of dark psychology, and although it might sound like a concept from a movie, it's a genuine concept recognized by top practitioners within the field.
He called that the dark triad. Machiavellianism, a narcissist, that's the next part of the dark triad. Then you have psychopathy.
The three conditions create a way for us to measure the dark psychology of Tony Soprano. So without wasting too much time, let's see if he truly does qualify for these conditions. We've already discussed Machiavellianism in chapter 3, and how Tony shows strong signs of embodying a Machiavellian leader. As a reminder, and to imprint the dark psychology definition in your mind, the hallmarks of this dark triad trait are a willingness to focus on self-interest at all times, an understanding of image, perception and superficial appearance, and the ruthless exercise of power and cruelty over compassion and mercy. I think the saddest part of this trait is that at times, and don't get me wrong, this is a minority, but we see that Tony has the ability to have a conscience and show some sort of compassion, even if it goes against the values of the mafia. For example, when Ralph killed a stripper named Tracy, just like it would for most of us, it rubbed Tony the wrong way, and he beat up Ralph. However, to the other guys, him hitting Ralph in retaliation was seen as worse than Ralph killing Tracy, showing he may have had more compassion than his peers. He cares deeply for his horse that was killed in a fire, and actually kills Ralph for setting the fire. And as mentioned, when everyone wanted Vito dead for being gay, Tony actually hesitates and wants to give him a pass to live his life. But Tony knows that if people fear him, they will respect him as their leader, so he avoids his conscience at all times. But Tony sometimes does the opposite. He'll actually commit evil, like killing Ralph, killing his own nephew Christopher, but then completely lie about it to the other members to maintain perception that he's a good and fair leader. The more you think about it, the people who knew Tony in the show never fully knew the real him, but he warped their perception of him by using Machiavellian tactics. A lot of people see narcissism as simply someone who loves themselves too much, and although it's along the right lines, it's far from painting the full picture of a narcissist. Tony is on the border in my opinion. You see, narcissism is essentially inflated self-worth, believing you're significantly superior than the average person, and because of that, you require praise and validation, and you definitely can't take criticism. The reason Tony is on the border is because his self-worth isn't necessarily inflated. He's the leader of the mafia, meaning he has control over a lot of men, he makes a lot of money, he's highly respected. He does still show the symptoms mentioned, however I believe these develop from an insecurity more than inherent narcissism. He needs the validation now as he wasn't given enough as a child. He can't take criticism because he can't be put down again like his mother put him down. Tony did on the whole start to see himself as superior when he became the leader, but we aren't given enough context on his life growing up to see this as a lifelong pattern, which is important for diagnosis. If I was to give a definitive answer, I would say Tony is narcissistic. Now for the big one. Psychopathy is a hard one to define precisely, but it refers to a psychological condition often involving superficial charm, impulsivity, and a lack of commonly held human emotions such as empathy and remorse. And as a result of these traits, we get what we call a psychopath. The best analogy of a psychopath is a wolf in sheep's clothing, and that's where the superficial charm comes in. Someone who's able to appear charming and capable of normality, but when they get a grasp of their victim, the evil reveals itself. Tony is definitely psychopathic to an extent. He's a lying murderer, but to what extent does he truly qualify? The best way to detect if Tony is a psychopath is by recognizing his outward manifestations and behaviors. Charm is one of the most common outward behaviors of a psychopathic person. However, it needs to be superficial rather than genuine. This means that you're making the person like you but for an ulterior motive in the future. However, with Tony, most of his charm is with women, but he rarely has ill intentions, he just wants to sleep with them. His superficial charm is sometimes present in business negotiations, like when meeting with the New York members. He tends to keep a happy and loving face whilst plotting his own things in private. A lack of remorse, as mentioned, is another distinct trait in psychopathy, and this one is 50-50. In cases like Vito, Pussy, Gloria, his cousin Tony B, he showed some level of basic remorse. Not necessarily weeping for them, but some level. But with Jackie Jr., Adriana, or when he was being overtly racist to his daughter's mixed-race boyfriend, he lacked remorse. So it's situation dependent, and it's the same with his lack of empathy. He sees everyone he does wrong as part of the game, and that soldiers know the risk they're getting into.
We're soldiers, you know. Soldiers don't go to hell. It's war. Soldiers, they kill other soldiers. We're in a situation where everybody involved knows the stakes. And if you're gonna accept those stakes, you gotta do certain things.
A lack of impulse control is another major trait. Regular people have internal mechanisms that stop them from behaving recklessly or doing things impulsively, but a psychopath doesn't. Tony doesn't bide his time with women. If he wants them, he'll try straight away. With his anger, he's pretty impulsive on acting on it, and he beats up the club's bouncer, Georgie. despite all of these and with all the other traits considered, I don't think Tony Soprano is fully a psychopath. If there was a scale of 0 to 2, 0 meaning no psychopathic traits, 1 meaning some traits displayed at times, and 2 meaning a psychopath, I'll put Tony at 1. You have to remember, other conditions like narcissism can have overlapping traits and lead to an incorrect diagnosis of psychopathy. Yes, Tony is evil. Yes, Tony is a liar. Yes, Tony is a murderer, but not every evil, lying murderer is a psychopath.